Oranjemund was established in 1936 as a closed town governed by a subsidiary of De Beers called Consolidated Diamond Mines, or CDM. Namdeb, formerly CDM, provided Oranjemund's residents, mostly employees of the mine, with all the services that were required for the people of the town. In the 1990s, however, Namdeb began scaling back their role there. And now Oranjemund or OMDis's journey to 2030 has begun, a journey that is expected to see changes that will see the town reach its full potential. Welcome, my name is Shea Ulenga. As part of a series of interviews focused on Oranjemund's transformation, we are speaking with former residents of the town that have gone on to do great things. Joining us virtually from Cape Town, South Africa, is Professor Mark Solms, currently the Director of Neuropsychology in the Neuroscience Institute of the University of Cape Town and Groote Schuur Hospital. He is an A1 rated researcher, member of the Academy of Sciences of South Africa, has received numerous international honors, published 350 neuroscientific and psychoanalytic journals, articles, and authored 8 books. Dr. Solms, what are some of your fondest memories of living in Oranjemund?
I remember best the desert. I was a child in Oranjemund, and after school I would go home and have lunch, and then I would spend the entire afternoon exploring the desert. There was a fence around the town, and we weren't meant to cross that fence, but you know what children are like. So I went through that fence, and there are these glorious golden sand dunes, huge, and they would be different, from one week to the next. The whole sand dune would move, and I would slide down those dunes, climb up them, the hot surface of the sand, and then the cold sand underneath, and all the little creatures, snakes and scorpions, and sometimes I would find skeletons of dead gemsbok and so on. So it was a one all by myself. I would just wander for 2 hours or so into the desert, and then 2 hours back again. That's how I would spend my afternoons.
It sounds like it created the perfect opportunity for a child to explore this environment. Tell us about the residents of the town and how you remember them growing up in Oranjemund.
Well, I was there from 1961 until 1973. So those were very different times from how they are today. It was a completely artificial community, artificial in all sorts of ways. You must remember, first of all, that was the height of apartheid, and Namibia was still occupied by South Africa. So all of the apartheid laws applied there too. But it was compounded by the fact that Oranjemund was so isolated and so artificially created by De Beers, the diamond mining company. So the whole town was fenced off from the world, and everything inside the town belonged to the company. So everyone's house belonged to the company, their cars belonged to the company, their furniture belonged to the company. And everyone was employed by the company. So, they were a close-knit community for that reason, because they were all kind of isolated there together. But it was also artificial in the sense that because of how things were those days, the community in the town was entirely white. There were no black people in Oranjemund. The only black people were employees of the company who worked on the mine, and they were also household staff for the senior employees. And they all lived in what was called a compound. So it was a totally bizarre world. I'll show you how bizarre it was. Because the black employees were migrant workers from Avambo land, they were not allowed to bring their families. So the only black people that I had contact with as a child were men. There were no women. I went on holiday once to Cape Town with my family, with my parents. And there I must have been, 6 years old or so. And that's the first time that I met a black woman. And I was stunned that you got such a thing as black women. So it was in many ways, there was a lot about it that was from the inside. If you were privileged to be an employee of the company and to have access to all the wonderful resources, that community had a whale of a time. They had fantastic facilities, and they, I think, had a very strong social bond with each other. But you know, it was very different if you were black.
What did you learn while living in Oranjemund, and how did the town support you?
As a child in Oranjemund, I got because it was such a vast landscape with this small oasis in the middle of it, with all of the facilities that were made available to the employees of De Beers. It was a very privileged existence. And so I got a sense of the world being my oyster. You know, you really felt as if you could affect the world because you didn't know that there was a world bigger than the one that you were in. So I think I got a sense of real confidence, you know, of being able to do things. And that stood me in good stead in later years. I moved to Pretoria afterwards when I was 12, and then to Johannesburg, and then eventually to London. So I slowly moved into bigger and bigger cities and got a proper sense of my place in the world. And I'm very glad I didn't have that sense at the beginning. It gave me a confidence that I think I otherwise wouldn't have had. I must add also that the school, Oranjemund Private School, it was a fantastic school. So when I moved to South Africa and to their education system, I think I was streets ahead of my peers because the school in Oranjemund really gave me a fabulous foundation. And I eventually became an academic and a scientist. And I think I have a lot to be grateful to Oranjemund Private School for.
What potential with the transformation in mind do you believe the town has?
I think that because it was so artificial and so isolated, the company had to create a sort of a local version of everything, because we were just in the middle of nowhere, and we were separated because of the security concerns. So the town is jam-packed with everything that any town could ever want. It has everything. You know, there's first of all, the natural splendor of the place. You know, the ocean, the desert, the river. But then this artificial oasis, you know, surrounded by trees in the middle of a desert, with the Pink Pan and the Cormorant Yacht Club and this grand golf course and the shopping centers. And, you know, those days we even made our own cool drink. There was a cool drink factory in Oranjemund. So I think that the potential of the place is, if anyone living there, you know, you're living in a town that's got everything that you could possibly need. But at the same time, you know, it's a small town. So you're not deprived and bereft and marginalized. You know, you have everything that you could need, but also with all the benefits of a small town. In terms of the future, I imagine tourism must be the big economic opportunity for the town. I would, you know, love other people to know this, for it to be, it's like the best kept secret, you know, if that town could be connected to the wider Namibia and South Africa and the world. You know, I think it would be a fabulously interesting place to live and a fabulously interesting place to visit. So I think the future must be bright for Oranjemund.
Having spent your childhood in Oranjemund, what do you believe makes the town truly unique?
A world all of its own. You know, it has everything. It has everything, and it's sequestered. You know, so it's normally such a remote town. You know, would be something pretty minimalist. You know, but because it has the richest diamond deposit in the world, and it was really worth the investment for De Beers, who those days ran the place, they made it into an exceptionally resourced town. So what makes it unique is that it is this really sophisticated, multifaceted village with water and trees and grass and golf courses and, you know, everything. but set in the middle of this grand natural landscape of the Namib Desert and along the Skeleton Coast, which is so dramatic. So it's really not an exaggeration at all to say it's unique. There can't possibly be anywhere in the world like Aranyamund. There was a man who worked in my parents' house. His name was OMDis, and it's a sign of the apartheid times that I never even knew what his surname was. And he taught me, or he tried to teach me to speak Avambo. And I remember one little phrase he taught me. And so when I came back to Namibia, to Windhoek, when I landed at the airport, I was a teenager, and I asked the passport official, what does this mean? With this thing I remember. So I said to her, Haiko denganenga, shishikutu dengalengi. That's what Andres said to me. And then she was appalled and explained to me what it means.
Before I let you go, there's one more question I have to ask you. What do you wish for the future of Aranyamund and its people?
What I wish for the future of Aranyamund is that others can have the same experience that we did. We were such a privileged little community, but it was all set in the context of a highly artificial commercial setup, of De Beers, and also the highly artificial political setup of apartheid. If a broader section of not only Namibia but also the world could have access to the Aranyamund that I came to know and love, then I think that if they have a childhood there, it'll be a fabulous childhood. If they set up their adult lives there, they will have a fabulous time. And if they're just tourists, likewise. So I wish the world to have the same wonderful experience that I did back in the 1960s.
Thank you for sharing with us, Professor.
Thank you.
That was Professor Mark Solms, the current Director of Neuropsychology in the Neuroscience Institute of the University of Cape Town and Groote Schuur Hospital, and a former resident of Aranyamund who has made a name for himself as an author and researcher. Thank you for watching.